Hey guys, Garrett McLaughlin here, and in this video I want to talk about how to use strength training to improve bone health. So a lot of people, and especially the running population that I deal with, either have a history in osteoporosis, osteopenia, have lower than normal levels of bone mineral density. This can become a problem as we age and we continue to decline when it comes to bone mineral density. And then obviously when it comes to running, bone stress injuries such as bone reactions and stress fractures are very common if we're continuing to put the same submaximal repetitive load on the tissue. A couple of key things we want or really need to focus on when it comes to optimizing or improving bone health is dynamic movements over static. We want to constantly be moving, again, loading the joints in a variety of ways. So dynamic movements that are also variable in nature. We're moving forward, side to side, forward, backwards. Running in particular, again, very specific, right? Very monotonous, only moving forward. So as your body starts to fall into that pattern, we tend to decline as far as bone mass in other areas because we're not challenging ourselves in that way. Some other key factors we want to focus on are discrete and intermittent bouts of loading. What that means is, again, not just doing it once, but breaking these things up into smaller loading phases throughout the day. Some good research showing out if you can do a series of plyometric or jumping exercise in the morning and then at night has a greater overall benefit than doing all of those exercises just at one time throughout the day. Okay? So these are some of the things we need to focus on when it comes to improving overall bone health. Okay? What I want to do in this video is run through two of my favorite strength training exercises that help improve or stimulate bone growth. Key things we want to focus on here, some of these long bones are axial loading. So we want to load the body, again, think vertically. If we had a load coming straight down my head to compress, we want to really create that compressive and that loading forces down into the chain to help stimulate bone growth. Obviously, we can move in a variety of different ways to get more site-specific increases in bone mineral density, but just working on the axial loading, those compressive forces, can be a good long-term strategy to help improve the health and the quality of your bones. When you look at a lot of these research articles on either some kind of bone-related disorder like osteoporosis, osteopenia, or a bone stress injury, that you developed from just taxing yourself too much and breaking down the bone more quickly than it can repair itself, you'll see a term in there called, you need to stimulate bone growth, you need to achieve adequate strain intensity. What that means is, depending on what current level you're at in terms of overall bone strength, you need to then exceed that to create a stimulus that's going to increase overall bone mineral density. So it really depends on where you're starting from to know what the next best step is. For the people that have never incorporated any kind of strength training in the past, doing a basic body weight squat could be that first step to start to load and to stimulate some kind of bone growth. So just to show you here, a regular body weight squat, if you're not familiar with strength training or any kind of body weight exercise at home, sitting back, butt back, feet about just hip width or slightly wider, toes out, and just dropping down into that squat position. Again, as we get down, muscles, tendons, starting to pull on the bones here to start to stimulate and stress those bones in a healthy way so then we can build more bone density. That's kind of the first step. So implementing that in your program, again, either once in the morning, once a night, every few days, just finding a regimen that works for you to do this consistently. Next step from there, or those of you that maybe are doing some kind of body weight squats, is adding more load and resistance onto that movement. So what I find for a lot of people, the goblet squat is a very good next step. So if you have a dumbbell, again, obviously we want to start light and then consistently progress forward as you become more confident and capable with that movement. Holding the dumbbell to the chest. Again, more load than the body weight version that I showed a second ago, but now you can see I'm stressing and increasing the intensity and the difficulty of the movement by holding more resistance. Just like I mentioned before, again, these movements as gravity acts down and I add weight up here, start to add more of this compressive force on the spine, on the pelvis, on the hips, on the knees, on all these joints and these bones are starting to compress more because I'm adding more resistance to the top. That is the best thing in the end to help stimulate more bone mineral density. Next thing we can do from there, again, this is usually a point where once people get intermediate advanced level, we start to put them in because now we're adding a barbell in the back, a little bit more challenging, a little bit more intimidating as well, but a very good next step as you move from body weight squats to goblet squats, then to a back squat. So here, if I'm holding the bar a little wider than shoulder width, I can go and put that bar right across the back of the shoulders. Same exact movement. The movement never changes, but as you can see, I'm increasing the intensity or the challenge on the movement in a slow and progressive way. So with the squat, again, bars across the back of the shoulders, same exact position, feet about hip width or slightly wider, toes out, and then I'm going to complete my same repetitions. Again, what I would do first with all of these movements, start light, go a little bit higher with your repetitions, and then as you increase the weight of the movement, you're dropping the repetition so you can increase more weight. Because as we increase load, we increase compressive forces, and in the end, that's a good recipe to then stimulate the bones in a healthy and progressive way to improve overall bone mineral density. The next exercise progression in this strength training to improve bone health series is the deadlift. Deadlift is a fantastic exercise, adds a lot of compressive and axial load down through the spine to the hips and lower extremity. Again, very good for improving overall bone health, but needs to be done properly. Slightly different position than the squat, which I showed a second ago, but a couple different ways, just like I mentioned before. Again, increasing the intensity of the movement as your body starts to adapt to it. So just starting where you feel like you need to be, starting in a slow and comfortable way, and then progressing as you start to get the movement, as you start to increase the intensity. At a certain point, again, we want to make sure the reward is greater than the risk. So depending on your history when it comes to strength training, we can continue to load the bar with a lot of weight, but at a certain point you might want to move to different plyometric movements to make sure we're not putting anyone in an uncomfortable position to load but then create some kind of injury when they're unsupervised or not performing the exercise correctly. So just to show you the deadlift, a couple different ways I like to progress through this, from a 1 dumbbell deadlift, 2 dumbbell deadlift, to a barbell deadlift. Movement is identical, it's exactly the same. Nothing changes in terms of the movement, which is why I see a lot of people, once they get to the barbell or trap bar deadlift, see a lot of success, is because they've been doing the same exact movement for typically months at that point, and they're very proficient at how to perform the deadlift. So they get there and they're just holding a different piece of equipment, but their body is really just kind of in tune with how to perform the movement. So like I mentioned before, axial or compressive load. So as I hold the weight here, starting to pull and compress down from the shoulders to the spine, pelvis, hips, all the way down to that lower extremity. Again, gravity as well as acting in that direction. What I want to do here is bend the knees, butt back, kind of get the body over this dumbbell. Dumbbell is in between, right in between the sneakers there, kind of right towards the ball of the foot. And I always want to make sure I'm maintaining my posture. My back is nice and flat, and I'm sitting down into the legs. But you can see my chest is down facing in front of me, rather than in a squat position where I'm really upright this way. Again, as I showed some of those squat variations earlier, it's a slightly different position with the deadlift. So getting down here nice and low. Back is flat, good posture, driving up legs and then forward through the hips. Control as I lower down. Again, depending on where or what your current level of strength and overall bone density is, you need to find where you fit into this progression. So if you're someone that's an experienced lifter, most likely this is going to cause any significant improvement in terms of bone mineral density. But if you're someone who has never lifted before, adding the 1 dumbbell deadlift could be a very good step to start to load the bones in a healthy and progressive way. So doing anything to start lightweight, anywhere from 2 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions. Again, we can start to go with a single dumbbell deadlift. I got a 35 right here. I can start going 45, 50, 55, 60, whatever's comfortable to hold to start to build a little bit more intensity on top of that, because we want to increase the load as we go. At a certain point, I find it's often a little bit more challenging to hold 1 really heavy dumbbell than it is to hold 2 lighter ones by your side. So I was doing 35 before, 2 35s here. So now 70 pounds as opposed to 35 pounds. The movement is identical. So as I grab those dumbbells, and I make sure back is nice and flat, and I'm lifting the weights up off the ground and setting up in a healthy position. Knees bent, butt back, sitting down into it, drive up and forward, throw at the hips. So now a little bit more load. As you can see, 70 pounds acting to pull me down. Always want to make sure I'm maintaining a nice flat back, and I'm using that lower body to create the movement, never moving through the spine as I create the movement here. Again, twice the load, or the ability to load more in a comfortable way to then take that next step. Same thing, 2 to 4 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions. As I feel more comfortable, I want to increase that weight as much as I can, even if that means dropping down repetitions. Again, anywhere from 4 to 8 repetitions. As long as we're increasing load and we're seeing that progression of we're making this movement harder, that's what we want to continue to improve bone mineral density. Next step here, going from dumbbells to barbell. So very big next step for a lot of people, and a step not many take because it's a little bit more intimidating here when you get to some of the barbell exercises. But if you've been working on that, 1 dumbbell, 2 dumbbell deadlift, typically I'll work on those for anywhere from 2 to 6 months, really, depending on the person, to slowly build them up to a more loaded movement like this. And the weight might not even be heavier. So that, say, was 70 pounds with 2 dumbbells in the end. What if I only put 70 pounds on the bar? So I'm not introducing more load, but I'm changing how they're performing the movement. Again, a different piece of equipment. Then I'm, from there, able to take a nice, slow, progressive approach to increasing weight, reducing repetitions from there. So just to show the traditional deadlift, again, from here, feet about, we'll say traditional style versus sumo should be wider, a little bit more toe out. Feet about hip width or slightly wider. I'm trying to get that bar right in front of the shins. Again, sitting back into the hips, let my body hinge forward so I'm over, kind of facing the ground in front of me. And then from there, I'm trying to kind of tension up into the back, keep my back nice and flat, and then drive forward through the hips to stand, control, lower down. Okay, so that bar is right in front of me. I don't want to reach out in front. It increases the stress on the lower back and lumbar spine. But there you can think of right now, this is 135 pounds. So as I stand with this weight, all that force is compressing down into the kinetic chain. So we get quite a bit of compressive forces. Very good strength training exercise. The same thing, start 2 to 4 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions. Increase resistance, start to back down the repetitions just a little bit to match that. And from there, I think you find a very helpful series of exercises to help stimulate bone mineral density. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you found value in it and you really understand how you can use various movements like the squat and the deadlift to use or introduce those axial and those compressive forces to stimulate good, healthy, and long-lasting bones. Again, bone mineral density is typically something that declines as we age, so incorporating different movement strategies and loading strategies to make sure we're maintaining or improving bone health is important. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope you have a great day.